Hello and welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. As always, we're here on Friday, this time with a little bit of a twist. I'm sitting in Prague for the Bitcoin conference. That doesn't stop me though to tell you all the news in this week. And let's kick off with the news out of the US, where the Senate has passed a legislation to actually enable the Genius Act. In case you didn't know, the Genius Act is the first of its kind regulation in the US that is taking a closer look at stablecoins specifically. Once the bill is now going to Congress and they would approve it as well, it actually gets written into law and it would state that all of these stablecoin issuers need to be backing these stablecoins one-on-one to have a peg to the dollar. How they do it is a little bit differently laid out. So things like algorithmic stablecoins are probably not ideal for this. So you need a backing mechanism to actually the fiat system. And something as close as we've seen it with Tether, arguably, or with USDC, who recently went public through their company Circle. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has been very vocal about his push to actually enable stablecoins. In the Genius Act, they also make a vast difference between, let's call it, speculative assets such as Bitcoin and stablecoins, and they clearly differentiate the two. This is good news for Bitcoin because at the end of the day, they are now showing an interest in digital assets in actually regulating them. The stablecoin issuers now also need to report to the regulatory bodies directly. And it's the first major milestone for said assets in the US. And it could be potentially the kickstart for future regulation, now taking a closer look, for example, at Bitcoin. News number 2 come out of Ukraine, and that's that they have their roughly, and I'm rounding up now, 47,000 Bitcoin on hold. And there are some politicians in parliament who said, we can do more about this, because the Ukraine is actually quite a central hub for development and a lot of Bitcoin adopters as well. The war situation showed that there are a lot of people who were able to flee the country with most of their wealth because it was saved in Bitcoin. And now there is a legislative process to actually enable the 47,000, roughly, it's a little bit less than that, but I'm rounding up again, to actually turn them into a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Parliament will vote about this, and if it passes, this would actually be the first major country close to Europe, close to home here, that is also enabling a Bitcoin reserve. And who knows, it could kickstart an actual run with other nation states who may not be the US, the UK, or major global economies, but rather economies who have a grassroots movement, build a stack, and are now looking to actually expand into the Western financial system. And last but definitely not least, we also have some news out of Spain. The major big bank BBVA has announced a 7% portfolio allocation to Bitcoin for customers holding north of €500,000. With this step, they're the first major bank, and actually one of the first banks in Spain as well, to recommend that allocation. However, they didn't really do it because of, fundamentals in Bitcoin, such as the hard cap, the decentralization, and the store of value function. They rather looked at the performance with the ETFs and said, if you want a good performance in your portfolio, diversified and all of these things, you should take a closer look with Bitcoin. Nevertheless, you're going to celebrate the win if there is one. And a 7% portfolio allocation is vastly more than what you usually read. You usually read between 1 and 3%. And with this move, BBVA is now actually showing a keen interest. Whether that kickstarts the adoption of other institutions, we shall see. But for now, good job over in Spain. And with that, we're at the end of this week in Bitcoin. You know the drill. If you got questions, feedback, or just want to say hello, leave me a comment below. Also, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you haven't done that so. And I will then see you next week at the same time and another place, but we'll catch up.